All right, let's break down a really fascinating idea in language teaching called the Comprehension Approach. Honestly, it might just change the way you think about how we learn a new language.
So here's what we're going to cover. We'll kick things off by defining what this approach is all about. Then we'll dig into its core ideas. After that, we'll see what it actually looks like in a classroom, checking out some techniques and activities. And we'll wrap it all up with a fair look at both its strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, first things first. Let's get a handle on what the comprehension approach actually is. At its core, the comprehension approach is all about putting listening and understanding first. The whole philosophy is built on this really powerful but simple idea. You have to understand a language before you can speak it. I mean, think about how babies learn, right? They spend a whole year, sometimes more, just soaking up sounds and listening before they even try to say a word. This approach tries to bring that natural process into the classroom. Speaking isn't forced, it's just expected to pop up on its own, once you've built a really solid base of understanding.
So how does this whole understanding first thing actually work? Let's break down the core principles and what makes this approach tick.
There are really 4 key things that make this work. The first is what's called comprehensible input. This is basically language that's just a little bit harder than what you already know, but the teacher makes it understandable using context, pictures, or gestures. Then you've got the silent period. This is huge. It means learners aren't forced to talk until they feel ready, which totally lowers their anxiety. And that leads to a low effective filter, creating a super relaxed, stress-free vibe where your brain is just more open to learning. And finally, the focus is always on meaning over form. It's way more important that you get the message than it is to worry about perfect grammar.
And all of this is built on a few key beliefs. The absolute #1 rule is that understanding has to come before speaking. That's non-negotiable. It means that teaching someone to speak is put on hold, deliberately. The idea is that all the good stuff you pick up just by listening, vocabulary, sentence structure, will naturally carry over into speaking and reading later on. And the foundation holding all this up? That last point. The teaching itself should be as stress-free as possible to create the perfect environment for your brain to just acquire the language.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this actually look like in a real classroom? Let's get into the techniques.
Well, this is where the teacher's job gets a total makeover. Instead of being a grammar cop, the teacher's main rule is to be this constant fountain of understandable language. They are the guide, the main source, and their #1 job is to make sure the language they're using is accessible and actually means something to the students. So how do they pull that off? Well, they use pretty much everything they've got. We're talking big gestures, pictures, and even real objects, what teachers call realia. They'll repeat things, say them in different ways, and they might even drop in a word from the student's own language just for a quick moment of clarity. The teacher basically becomes a performer, super expressive and always modeling the language and actions so students can just follow along.
Okay, so we know what the teacher is up to. But what about the students? What are they actually doing in the classroom?
You'll see some really cool low-pressure activities. A classic one is total physical response, or TPR. This is where the teacher says something like stand up or walk to the door, and the students just do it. No talking needed, just understanding. You'll also see lots of question and answer sessions, but they're all about checking if you understood, or group stuff like text reconstruction, where students get jumbled up sentences from a story and have to put them back in order. Activities like summarizing or filling in the blanks in a closed task are also common because they all reinforce understanding without demanding you speak right away.
But hey, let's be real. No single method is a silver bullet. So for our last section, let's weigh the pros and cons.
And it's pretty clear when you lay it all out. On the plus side, the big win is that it creates a super positive, low-anxiety classroom. You aren't forced to speak, which helps build a really strong foundation of understanding in a way that feels natural. But there are some limitations. It can lean a little too heavily on physical actions, and some of the activities can get old after a while. A big one is that the jump from understanding to actually speaking isn't really taught directly, which can be a real hurdle. And for those learners who love digging into grammar rules, this go-with-the-flow method might just not feel structured enough.
And all of this really leads us to the big, final question at the heart of this whole thing. Does focusing so deeply on comprehension actually get learners ready for the messy, spontaneous, think-on-your-feet demands of a real conversation? It's the central debate around this approach, and it really leaves us with something important to think about when it comes to what the end goal of learning a language really is.